Have you ever watched someone push and push until they finally crossed the wrong line? That's exactly what happened when the HOA Patrol climbed my grandpa's fence for the second time. They thought they could walk right into his yard, demand things, and act like they owned the place. But what they didn't know was that Grandpa had been waiting for them, with an electrified gate. And when they grabbed it, the shock they got wasn't just physical, it was the moment they realized they had finally messed with the wrong man. Stick around because the way this all unfolded, the screaming, the neighbors recording, the HOA president storming down the street, it turned into the kind of neighborhood drama you only see in crazy HOA revenge stories. Before I dive in, let me know in the comments, do you think Grandpa was a hero for defending his property, or did he go too far? I'll be reading your takes. Grandpa isn't the type to start fights. He's a quiet man, a retired electrician, living out his days on a big corner lot that he built himself. He spends most of his time sitting on the porch, sipping coffee, feeding birds, and telling stories about the old days. But ever since a new HOA board took over, things had gotten ugly. They hated his old-fashioned wooden shed, they hated his garden gnomes, and they especially hated the chain-link fence he put up for his dogs. It started small, letters in the mailbox about non-compliance, ridiculous fines for unsightly lawn decor. Then came the so-called HOA Patrol, volunteers who wore polo shirts with HOA Cops printed across the chest, as if they were real officers. They strutted around with clipboards, knocking on doors, issuing warnings like they had authority. Grandpa ignored them at first. "He's got no power over me," he'd say, rocking on the porch. But ignoring them only made them come harder. One evening, neighbors spotted the patrol trying to climb over Grandpa's fence, peeking around his yard, taking photos of his shed. He caught them and chased them off, yelling, "Next time you set one boot in my yard, you're going to regret it." You'd think that warning would have been enough. But no, the patrol came back. And this time, Grandpa was ready. Have you ever had an HOA or a nosy neighbor that just wouldn't leave you alone? Comment your worst story. I bet nothing tops what's coming next. The next weekend, Grandpa noticed something odd. His motion sensor lights had been triggered twice in the night. A neighbor whispered that the HOA had been holding late-night meetings plotting how to deal with stubborn homeowners. Grandpa knew exactly what that meant. They were coming again. So he went to work. And this is where his background mattered. Remember, Grandpa was a retired electrician. He'd wired up entire factories in his time. He knew safety limits, voltage, how to make something sting without doing real harm. That night, while the neighborhood slept, Grandpa was in the garage, pulling out old wires, a transformer box, and some insulated gloves. With careful precision, he rigged up a system to electrify his front gate just enough to give a painful jolt. Not deadly, not dangerous, just memorable. The next morning, he sat on his porch, coffee mug in hand, eyes fixed on that gate. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even nervous. He was calm, like a fisherman waiting for a bite. And right on cue, the patrol arrived. 3 of them. Clipboards, HOA polo shirts. One of them, the loudmouth, was grinning like he already owned the place. Grandpa didn't move. He just watched. They walked up the driveway muttering about non-compliance fines. Then the first one grabbed the gate. The zap rang out, loud enough that even the neighbors across the street jumped. The guy yelped, stumbling back, shaking his hand like he'd grabbed a live snake. The second patrol member laughed until he touched it too. Another snap of electricity, another shout. Grandpa? He didn't flinch. He just sipped his coffee. And just when you think it couldn't get crazier, wait until you hear what happened when the HOA president herself showed up.
The commotion drew people out of their houses. Curtains parted, phones came out, neighbors leaned on fences to watch the drama unfold. The HOA patrol was now red-faced, embarrassed, and furious. One of them screamed, "You can't do that! This is illegal!" Grandpa raised an eyebrow. "Illegal? Trespassing's illegal. You boys touched my gate. That's on you!" By then, the HOA president came storming down the street, heels clicking on the pavement, clutching a folder full of violation notices. She was the kind of HOA Karen who lived for power, the one who measured grass height with a ruler and called meetings over mailbox paint. She pointed at Grandpa, yelling, "You're finished! You assaulted my officers!" Grandpa leaned back in his chair, unbothered. "Officers? They're just neighbors with clipboards, and my fence isn't a playground." The crowd chuckled. Phones kept recording. The president's face went red. She threatened to call the police. Grandpa shrugged. "Go ahead. I'll be right here." If you were sitting on that porch, watching it go down, would you clap for Grandpa or side with the HOA? Of course, the HOA did call the cops. 2 officers showed up, lights flashing. They listened to both sides, while the patrol whined about being attacked, and the president waved her folder like it was the Constitution. But then the neighbors stepped in. Videos rolled. Every angle showed the same thing. HOA Patrol trespassing, touching the gate, getting zapped, and Grandpa sitting calmly the entire time. The cops couldn't help but smirk. "Ma'am, looks like they got what they asked for." That wasn't enough for the HOA. They dragged Grandpa into small claims court, demanding damages. But once again, the truth came out. The judge watched the videos, read Grandpa's notes, and finally leaned forward. "Sir, you clearly warned them before. They had no right to enter your property. Case dismissed." The courtroom erupted in laughter. The president stormed out. The patrol looked like scolded children. Grandpa went home, poured himself a fresh cup of coffee, and sat back on the porch. The gate still stood, wires intact, a quiet guardian against trespassers. From that day forward, the patrol never climbed his fence again. In fact, they crossed the street whenever they passed his house. The neighbors? They started calling Grandpa a legend. Some even asked him for tips on wiring up their own fences. And the HOA, they learned the hard way that when you push too far, sometimes the quietest man in the neighborhood is the one who will teach you the loudest lesson. So, what do you think? Was Grandpa's electric fence the perfect revenge, or should he have handled it differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you've got your own crazy HOA or entitled neighbor story, I'd love to hear it. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the story, subscribe for more insane HOA drama, revenge, and neighborhood chaos, and share this with someone who's ever dealt with an HOA nightmare. Because trust me, this is just one of many battles in the endless war of HOA versus homeowner.